What happens when a global car company decides to completely rethink its Halo sports car? To challenge its engineers to beat the Porsche 911 Turbo at almost half the cost. Who created this challenge? Carlos Ghosn. Yes, that guy. Let's go back to 1999 for a glimpse into where Nissan was at the time. The car maker was on the verge of bankruptcy because of a multi-billion-dollar debt. In order to survive, Nissan made alliances with French car maker Renault. They made Carlos Ghosn CEO of Nissan, who not only saved the company but turned a $35 billion massive debt into a $2.7 billion profit in just 3 years. One of Ghosn's immediate tasks was to work to revive the Nissan GT-R. He handed this mission off to Kazutoshi Mizuno as chief engineer. Mizuno was a race engineer, a team director, and a car designer for over 40 years with Nissan. He became the godfather of the GT-R. He created a supercar that was accessible to the less affluent market. The requirements were a split-second gear shift, a hand-built engine, top aerodynamics for a production supercar. The GT-R had a drag coefficient of a 0.26, better than the 911 at the time. A practical 4-seat layout, a trunk big enough for a set of golf clubs, and still it had to be capable of exceeding 186 miles an hour with anyone at the wheel. What was crazy about this requirement is that Nissan was a conservative company and was not in the business of creating cars that were dangerous to drive. So this car had to be safe for practically anyone to touch. And part of that was the physics and the dynamics and the driving experience and the technology, all combining to make a car that was accessible and dominating. October 23, 2007, the Nissan GT-R debuts at the 40th Tokyo Auto Show. It is an instant success. It debuts its nurburgring time of 7 minutes and 38 seconds, 2 seconds faster than the Porsche 911 Turbo. Not only did enthusiasts fall in love with the GT-R, but so did car journalists. And at the time, there was no bigger voice in the car journalist world than Jeremy Clarkson. Let's hear what he had to say about the GT-R right here.
But I think they put 1,000,000 horsepower in this one because the acceleration is just blistering.
Motor Week also gave the GT-R rave reviews talking about the mechanical grip and how amazing it was on the track.
Huge traction helped glue the GT-R to the track surface like few cars we've ever driven.
No review can be complete without hearing what Chris Harris had to say, and of course he's comparing to a Porsche 911 Turbo.
Typically, now I've said that the Porsche was easier to drive, the GT-R goes and sets the faster lap time. Always the case. But these were done in traffic, in drying conditions, so they're not worth taking too seriously. But there's a time anyway. What you need to know is that both cars are silly fast.
Precision is critical in building the VR38 engine. In order to guarantee that the engine is built to the quality standards, only 4 craftsmen that are qualified and called Takumi during the 6-hour process that they do not skip on any exceptions and only expect perfection during the process. Comes with is a double wishbone front suspension with aluminum arms, a multi-link rear suspension with aluminum arms, rigid front and rear suspension subframes with 6-point mountain, Bilstein Damtronic suspension system. GT-R is an abbreviation for Gran Turismo Racing. This car lives up to its name. The GT-R Nismo GT3 is a racing car manufacturers compete. This is where you can find Audi, Mercedes, Ferrari, Lamborghini, and many more. And won in 2015 the Bathurst 12-hour racing. In 2016, it won all 6 races of the Blancpain Super Endurance Series, easily winning the championship, which is the largest GT3 championship in Europe. Not only has the GT-R won in Europe, but it's also won in Japan in the GT500 class, where over 14 seasons it has won 41 impressive victories. Modifying a GT-R is the thing to do. Most people who track their GT-Rs start with suspension. Coilovers are usually the go-to.
More pad volume.
Now, to improve braking is also the next area, especially for track days. So a big brake kit does improve overall stopping power and allows for more heat. Can't talk GT-R performance without mentioning Alpha parts, whether it's intercoolers or any package imaginable. They make all different components for cooling, exhaust, and essentially some of their packages, for example, the Omega 14 produces 1350 horsepower, and you could go as crazy as the Omega 22, 2200 wheel horsepower, 1600 torque. With such a vast aftermarket, the GT-R took over racetracks in all different shapes and forms, whether it be roll racing, or high performance driving events, or just straight up street racing. You could see here that this GT-R is racing a 1700 horsepower one versus a 2000 horsepower one. Just insane the type of builds that we saw. Crazy amounts of horsepower being generated through the VR38. It didn't matter. It just became its own phenomenon in terms of being the most modified, fastest car that was accessible. Yes, you have underground Lamborghinis and definitely other types of high horsepower cars. However, the GT-R by far is the most prevalent. GT-R transformed culture. It became an icon for the car scene and made its way into the mainstream, especially in Japan, where it wasn't uncommon to see various variations of GT-Rs wrapped, or all kinds of Liberty Walk kits, other kinds of ground effects. I mean, the personalization goes to such extreme levels. And all this modification and led to not only different looks, but just fanboys, right? The culture, the hearing of the exhaust pop has become just a main thing that people expect. Flames from GT-Rs is a legend and has many fanboys and deserves the warm praise that you gave it as the greatest Nissan sports car ever made. The future of the GT-R is uncertain. There's speculation of an R36, but regardless, there will never be a GT-R in the Nissan stable that will have this longevity or this much impact on the car scene.